Feeling a little chilly? They say winter is coming. But be warned, what about the dragons? Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and today we're going to take a little look, well I should say a big look, at Fire and Blood, which is the latest book, I'm going to say book, from George R. Martin. Yes, this has only just recently come out in November 2018 in the UK, and as you can tell, it is over 700 pages long, so I'm quite impressed that it's only taken me 2 or 3 months to read. Of course, we've just had Christmas as well, so that played a bit of you have to do Christmas and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I'm quite impressed that I managed to wade through it. Or was it a wade through it? Was it a slog? Because sometimes when you get a big book like this, it may feel like that. But let's find out if it really was. Fire and Blood, yes, just what is it all about? What is the setup? Well, this is a history, this is a fictional history set in Westeros and the surrounding lands, and it's set 300 years before A Song of Ice and Fire, which is, the TV show is named Game of Thrones. So those of you that have watched Game of Thrones or have read A Song of Ice and Fire will know pretty much a lot about the world, the fantasy world that George R. Martin has created, Westeros. And this is, it's not necessarily a prequel because it's not written as a novel. It's not a fictional account it's more of a history. So it's more of an overview. So I guess you could call it a prequel, but only from the point of view that it's set 300 years before the events in A Game of Thrones. So it begins with the legendary, and I'm rubbish at pronouncing names, as you all know. It's Aegon, I think that's how you pronounce it, Aegon the Conqueror. And he is the creator of the Iron Throne, the big famous Iron Throne that you see in Game of Thrones. And it recounts the generations of the Targaryens, and that's the royal House Targaryen, and they're a family, and they fought and held on to the Iron Throne for 300 years. So it's all the build-up, so it's all about the Targaryen household and their interactions with the other houses that you find in A Song of Ice and Fire. Plus there are some houses that we may not have heard of. There are others that we will have heard of. And this isn't too many spoilers, but there are some houses that have kind of risen and fallen that I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that you'd only find in this Fire and Blood. So he tells you about houses that once were quite proud, but then have fallen on hard times. And then by the time you get to Game of Thrones, they no longer exist. So it also explores the questions, what really happened during the Dance of the Dragons. Now that's sort of mentioned in the Song of Ice and Fire as a historic event. And also, what were Maegor, I think that's how you pronounce it, Maegor the Cruel's worst crimes? And there's lots of other questions that, gets addressed, because there are references to A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, sort of flecked all the way through the work. So if you've seen Game of Thrones or read Song of Ice and Fire, you'll kind of go, you'll nod sagely going, oh yeah, I know about that. The themes, as there are over 700 pages in this book, it is, and that's 300 years of history, obviously you're going to get lots of different themes. For me, there are more recurring themes or main themes than others. Some are lesser themes, so I've kind of just picked ones that really kind of tuned into me. The first one that whenever you talk about Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire, it's always about power and rule and the political situation within Westeros and the surrounding isles, basically. So as you'd expect, it's a history of a family that claims to be royal, and then that's a good subject. What is royalty? Basically just people going around saying we're better than you, we have and in some cases the divine right to rule over you, and we're superior. And you think, well, hang on, why is that? And this is where power and rule comes in, because Martin explores the basic concept of I'm stronger than you, so therefore I can dominate you if I wish, and therefore I can rule over you. And you think, well, okay, how does that happen? Well, it then basically comes down to who has the largest army. Those of you that play Catan, you'll know all about that. And that's an interesting concept, because when I grew up, you kind of learn about law and order, and you think, yes, well, justice and law and order in a civilized society, it's law and order and peace that is the mainstay of how we run a society. But then when you peel back the layers, you think, well, what's keeping the peace? Well, it's actually who has the largest army. So if you've got a government, or if you've got a king or a queen, they are the ones that control the army or the police force. And it is really that basic. And I remember kind of over the years, as I've read books that have kind of explained that and watched documentaries, about war and about peace, and you then soon realise, unfortunately, violence is how any society is shaped, and that to me is quite sad, really. And I don't really know what the solution is. Why would I? But it suddenly dawned on me over a number of years, and I felt quite sad that is the only way that anybody could be, that peace can reign. So in this case, it's the House Targaryens, and they have dragons. Basically, they're the only ones with dragons, and therefore they have the ultimate weapon. And it's an arms race. Who has the better technology? Who has the better weapons? Who has the better army? And in this case, it's the House Targaryen. And they use that to devastating effect. So at its most basic, it's the law of the jungle. I'm stronger, and it's like, so therefore bend the knee. And it's like the chimpanzees, a group of chimpanzees or a pack of lions. There's a dominant factor, and everybody else has to kind of get into the pecking order. So at its most complex, though, power and rule and politics relies upon a layered structure. And I kind of thought it's more to do with codependency. Because if you have somebody who's in charge, like a king or a queen or a government, they're still reliant on the people. And in this case, they're bannermen, the other houses, supporting that rule. They've accepted. They've said, yeah, okay, then we agree. You are royalty, or you are the government. We voted you in. But in this case, you are a king, you are a queen. We're going to support you. But it's not for free. It's normally to do with lords and ladies. They get sort of a bit of power because it all trickles down, because they get given castles or big houses and gold, and they get given land in order to then rule over the next layer of society, which could be earls and dukes, and then it filters down even more. We get to, probably you and me, the common people, the commoners. I don't know if I'm a peasant, but maybe I am. But, so it's a structure, it's a complicated structure that always depends on codependency, because even the commoners, they depend on the next people up because they need to earn a living, and they're the ones that will have jobs, so you go to them and they will give you money, hopefully, to then for you in order to survive. So there's a big layered structure. So it takes a lot to try and change that structure. And even though that structure could be embedded for, hundreds of years, and it seems solid, it only takes one or two or a group of lords or ladies to change allegiance and, go against the ruling party, the king or the queen or the government, when suddenly it all just crumbles, and there you have civil war. So therefore, there are a couple more themes here that tag into that, which is loyalty and betrayal. And, this is a consequence of the power and the ruling, because as soon as someone else switches sides, you're going to get conflict, you're going to get disagreements, and then if those can't be settled peacefully through dialogue, then of course what have you got left? We do resort to violence, and we resort to war, and civil war in this case. So there's a layer, and therefore, obviously, loyalty and betrayal is actually two different sides of the same coin. Because, if you had a king or a queen that says, yes, you are loyal to me, and then suddenly they flip sides, then they were loyal, and now they're the betrayer. So you can become, you can be a loyalist or a betrayer, very quickly. So that's why, and also I started to think about this. Why are the reasons why you'd be loyal, and why are the reasons why you would betray somebody? And they're pretty much the same things. You can be loyal or betray somebody for love, for jealousy, You could be forced into betraying somebody or forced into being loyal to someone. There could be greed, so you could be almost bribed, manipulated with promises of gold or land. Family ties, because your father was loyal or your mother was loyal to a certain king or queen, therefore it's just assumed you would be. Blackmail, power. So there's all these things, all these categories that actually are in both, the reasons for both betrayal and loyalty. So I find them really fascinating. Those are really intertwined, and George R. R. Martin does a great job. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but there is a lot of betrayal going on and a lot of switching sides, and there's also a lot of loyalty where people, even though they're faced with death, they will still be loyal to their king or their queen or their lord, etc., etc. So I was, the more I read this book, the more that became clearer to me, and I hadn't really thought about the loyalty betrayal situation before. So George R. R. Martin did a really good job of kind of exploring that, of going, well, why do people switch sides? There's got to be a good reason, and it's not always a noble reason either. And all these themes, though, they do stem from families, because ultimately, what are we made up of? In our minds, we've sort of disconnected ourselves from everybody else. We have families. We've got a family unit, haven't we? And therefore, once you have family units, you get grandchildren and great grandchildren, and therefore it becomes a legacy. And so you do get people that think they are superior than other people, and therefore you will automatically assume that your family is going to be better than other people. And then that's fascinating, because it's like, how dare you think that you're better than me? Maybe you are, but then again, you've got to look at what is being better than somebody? What is that? Is it this way that you live your life? Is it the fact that you are just stronger? Is it you're a better sports person? I don't know, are you better creatively? Are you more intelligent? It's so erroneous to think that you are superior to somebody else, but some people do. They get caught up in their ego, but it can cause a lot of trouble, especially then if you are very good at manipulating other people by whatever means, to convincing them to be loyal to you, and then you wage war. And again, that's how wars start, because people want power, they want to dominate. So for me, those are the sort of overall themes, and I mean, I've barely scratched the surface with just those themes. There are so many more themes, as you can imagine. And overall, I really loved this book. I loved Game of Thrones, well, Song of Ice and Fire, the novels, or the 5 that he's written so far. Come on, George, finish the rest, finish them. And also the TV show, absolutely loved it. It was a brilliant adaptation of the books. And this was what my first thought was. If you've not read the books or you've not seen the TV show, would you actually enjoy this? Because this isn't a fiction. This isn't a novel that's going to, unfolds as it happens. This is a history that's already happened. And it's written more as an overview. Yes, there's lots of detail. There's beautiful detail in this. But it has a feel of it's a different beast. So I just wondered, if someone's come in fresh and they don't know any of the references, they don't really know any of the characters. I mean, there's loads of new characters that crop up in this. So it's not like I'm totally, I'm all familiar with all the characters, but I know the world. I know kind of how it operates a bit, because obviously I've read the books and seen the TV show. So I'm familiar with a lot of it. And obviously there is references that if you've immersed in Westeros and you kind of know what's going on a bit, you will, it's that familiarity, I can never say that word, familiarity. I know it very well, not that word, but anyway, I'm getting in a rabbit hole, or a dragon hole, a dragon cave. Anyway, no, so what I'm saying is, if you've not been involved with Game of Thrones in any way, even in the board games, would you enjoy it? Would it be dry? Because it'd be going, well, I don't know who these characters are. I don't know what this is all about. I don't know, dragons, what's all this about? So you might not be as invested. So if you haven't, if you have read this but not read the other books or anything to do with Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones, leave a comment. I'd be interested to know what you think about this, because I'm coming from a point of view that I can't undo that. And therefore I really think that helps. And again, just to remind you, this is a historical fiction giving an overview of events of people. It's not as it kind of happens. The quality of writing is excellent. I mean, George R. R. Martin's been writing for 30, maybe 40 years. I don't quite know how old he is. But he is a seasoned professional writer, and it shows. It's so engaging, the quality. There's beautiful words. There's words I didn't understand. Not that my vocabulary is brilliant. But, it's like, and I'm always fascinated, I want to learn new stuff as well. And just the way that he pieces it all together. I mean, it's a huge, sprawling history. Just to have that concept in your mind to begin with So I'm not surprised that the quality of writing is excellent. I mean, even if you read this from a point of view of learning how to write, you couldn't go wrong. And the same goes with A Song of Ice and Fire, or any of his books. Well, maybe his earlier ones. Again, when you read authors' earlier works, like I'm reading the Terry Pratchett novels as they were published, you can see improvements. And that's always lovely to see in a writer. So, as I say, it's fascinating to know, if you've not read or been involved with the Game of Thrones history or anything to do with it, whether or not you would find it interesting. So, overall, I loved it. A lot of this, though, was apparently, there's a companion book, which I do have, but I didn't read because I was still reading the actual novels, The World of Ice and Fire. So I think maybe what I'll do is I'll go back and read that, and that's a lovely big illustrated book, so I'm going to read that, and I'll do a review of that. Apparently a lot of this is in that book, so if you have read The World of Ice and Fire, which is a companion piece, you might have read a lot of this already. But if you haven't, then obviously it's going to be all new to you. So you could be a little bit disappointed if you've read The World of Ice and Fire, not knowing that a lot of this book actually appeared in that book. You might be a bit disappointed. Now, apparently, this is part 1 of Blood and Fire. There's going to be part 2, apparently. Who knows? That's word on the street, word on the cobblestones. So we'll see. But it'd be interesting. I would be up for part 2 because, there's even more history that he can delve into. And his wealth of imagination seems, to be pitless, bottomless. That's the word I'm looking for. Imagine a big pit. That's his imagination. So he's just drawing from all of his years of experience of writing. Blood and Fire, thoroughly, thoroughly recommended. Fire and Blood, yes. Thoroughly recommend it, but probably only if you've read read A Song of Ice and Fire or seen the TV show A Game of Thrones. I like to be precise if I can. Or maybe if you've played the board games, maybe you'd enjoy it, but maybe not. It might be too, you won't be invested enough in the whole world. But yeah, thoroughly enjoy it. And even though it's 700 pages, I didn't feel, it didn't drag. And that's a concern, isn't it? A novel like this. I was eager to read it, and that's a sign of a good book if you're engaged with it. But not everybody totally agreed with this. I'm just going to quickly read this. I got some, this is from Wikipedia. Apparently, the reception was mixed. We've got a Hugo Rifkind of the Times described it as self-indulgent crap. Roslyn O'Connor of The Independent faulted the book for its dry tone and stated that reading it feels like you've been assigned a mildly interesting but tedious piece of homework. Really? But on the other flip side, Dan Jones of the Sunday Times praised the book, calling it a masterpiece of popular historical fiction. I'm with you, Dan. That's what I think it is. Thank you so much for watching. Just to let you know, we have reviewed the books. What do you call them? Not A Game of Thrones. The TV. We've also reviewed some of the TV shows as well. And we've reviewed the board games and reviewed the books. So check them out on our YouTube channel. But remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're a dragon.